Have you ever sat at your desk, staring at a screen, and suddenly felt a quiet but disturbing question rise in your mind? What am I actually doing with my life? Millions of people around the world have felt this moment. Not in one country, not in one company, but across continents. In offices in New York, factories in Europe, call centers in Asia, and apartments where remote workers stare into glowing laptops late at night. A strange thought appeared in the early 2020s. What if I simply stop? What if I resign? Not next year, not after a promotion, but now. And then something unprecedented happened. Across the world, millions of workers began walking away from their jobs. Managers were confused. Economists were shocked. News headlines called it a revolution. They called it the Great Resignation. But what exactly was it? Was it a rebellion against modern work? A psychological reaction to a global crisis? Or something deeper? A silent signal that the modern system of work had begun to fracture from within. Because when millions of people decide at the same time that they no longer want to participate, it forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps the modern workforce was never as stable as it appeared. Henry David Thoreau once wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Why millions suddenly quit their jobs." The event now known as the Great Resignation did not begin with a single protest or movement. It began with something much quieter: fatigue. For decades, modern economies operated on a simple agreement. You give your time, your energy, your attention, and in return the system provides stability, a salary, security, a predictable future. But slowly, this agreement began to crack. Work hours increased. Digital devices erased the boundary between office and home. Emails arrived late at night. Meetings multiplied. Productivity software began measuring every second of attention. At the same time, many jobs began to feel strangely meaningless. Workers were told their labor mattered, yet their daily tasks felt detached from real human impact. Then the world experienced the shock of COVID-19. Suddenly, millions of people were forced to stop. Offices closed. Commutes disappeared. Daily routines collapsed. For the first time in decades, many workers had time to think. And thinking is dangerous for any system built on routine. People began asking questions they had ignored for years. Why am I spending most of my life working for something that feels empty? Why does success feel exhausting rather than fulfilling? And why does the system seem to demand more every year while offering less stability in return? When economies reopened, millions quietly made a decision. They resigned. Not always with anger, sometimes with relief, sometimes with fear, sometimes with no clear plan at all. In the United States alone, tens of millions voluntarily left their jobs, but similar patterns appeared across Europe, Asia, and other regions. For a brief moment, it looked like the workforce had awakened, as if millions had collectively decided to step outside the machine. In movie Fight Club, Tyler Durden says, "You are not your job. You are not how much money you have in the bank." Understanding what the Great Resignation really revealed. To understand the Great Resignation, we must look beyond simple explanations. Many assumed workers had suddenly become rebellious. Others believed people had simply become lazy. Both explanations miss the deeper truth. The Great Resignation revealed something fundamental about modern systems. Humans are not machines. A system can optimize productivity, maximize efficiency, and measure performance with perfect precision. But if the system ignores meaning, it slowly erodes the psychological foundation that keeps people participating. For decades, modern economies focused almost entirely on output, growth, profit, optimization. But human beings require something different: purpose, autonomy, dignity. When these elements disappear, participation becomes fragile. The Great Resignation showed that millions of people were not only exhausted physically, they were exhausted existentially. They were not just quitting jobs, they were questioning the deeper structure of modern work itself. But systems rarely collapse quickly. They adapt. Remote work expanded. Hybrid offices appeared. Companies began offering flexible schedules. Some organizations attempted to restore a sense of purpose within work. The system began adjusting itself, trying to stabilize the relationship between labor and meaning. Whether these changes are enough remains uncertain. But one thing became clear: workers are no longer silent participants. They are now conscious participants. How to rethink work after the Great Resignation. For individuals, the Great Resignation offers an important lesson. Do not wait until exhaustion forces you to question your life. Most people only rethink work when burnout becomes unbearable. But reflection should happen earlier. Ask yourself difficult questions before the system asks them for you. What kind of work actually feels meaningful? How much money is truly necessary for the life you want? And how much of your time are you willing to trade for security? Second, build flexibility in your life. The global workforce is changing rapidly. Automation, remote work, artificial intelligence, and economic instability will continue transforming labor markets. Rigid careers are becoming fragile. Adaptable skills are becoming valuable. Third, protect your psychological independence. Modern work environments often try to define identity through job titles and productivity metrics. But identity that depends entirely on work becomes dangerous. Because when work collapses, identity collapses with it. And finally, remember something simple but powerful. The Great Resignation was not only an economic event, it was a moment when millions of people realized that the most valuable resource they possess is not money, not status, but time. And once a person truly understands the value of their time, they begin to look at the entire structure of work in a very different way.